And reality is most of the farmers are incredible, and they go through all this process without with very low losses. So why you penalize the entire group with no good analysis of the process? Basically because you don't have the tools to do an individual profile of all the aspects for every single loan or insurance contract you do and so on. So that's our mission.
Hi there, food enthusiasts. Thanks for tuning in to Future Foodcast, where thought leaders in today's food industry discuss the trends and technology that will shape the future of food. Today, we're speaking with Isaque Eberhardt, the CEO of Agryo, and he will be talking about a little bit about his background as well as Agryo and what they offer in the food industry. So, Isaque, how are you today?
Very well, and super happy with the opportunity, Jim, and second, to explore this space of how can we help the food stability and safety and the progress of our society, supporting the farmers to have better production and supply chains in their daily job of feed the world.
Yeah, that's a huge issue for everybody, obviously, and it's become more challenging for many reasons lately, for sure. Not just the pandemic impacts and so on, but a lot to do with, climate change, population shifts, demand, and then, of course, things like economic problems like increasing prices and so on. So that said, it's great to have you here on the show. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what you do at Agryo? And not only that, but give us a quote more of a background. Tell us how you about yourself and how you founded the company. That would be helpful.
Absolutely. So I'm originally from Brazil. My family still have a farm in the south of Brazil, close to Uruguay's country. So we used to produce some vegetables, cattle, and my real passion, which was the honeybees. Up to 2003, I was a real farmer on the field doing the daily job with my family. We had two bad years, 2001 and 2002. And that at that point was like a decision to move to other job to compensate the losses we have. So my family is still working there, my father and my parents. And I moved to work outside with financial providers. And since then, I have been working more, most of the time with banks, sometimes with insurance companies, sometimes with international organizations like United Nations, developing programs and so on, mostly in finance itself, so lending related parts of the business and so on, sometimes with environmental services. So I had the opportunity to leave both sides of the fence, let's say this way, and do and leave the struggles to get financed. I always joke about when we finance our tractor in the farm. We need to lay down our credit, my brother, my younger brother, my father, and myself, plus a piece of land to finance equivalent to a $15,000 tractor. It's quite crazy, and nothing has been proven so much from there to today. So that's part of the experience as farmers, why we start the company. And in the perspective of the banking side and the financial industry, what I have been learning personally on this space is our industry is still doing things uncorrelated to the real world assets, let's say this way. So what I mean for that? What I mean is when you finance a farmer, let's say a farmer in Iowa, in Brazil, or in Africa, doesn't matter. Most of the time, I would say not 100%, but I'd say 99% of the time, the bank will not have the same level of analysis which they do in the personal level, like FICO score and other things, for the assets of the farmer, where the money should go for the lending, for example, and where the money should come from to repay the loan. When you don't do this type of analysis, you have the problems of sometimes you take too much risk, sometimes you don't take risks because you decide to not do the loan. And this brings imbalances on our system. So absence of finance in many regions, many farmers with problems, and difficult to improve the production, to supply better the production of the food, fibers, and everything else. So that's pretty much the frame why we started the company in 2019. And the challenge was, okay, how can we become like a Moody's for this space? So a place or a infrastructure where everybody can go, evaluate, monitor, and detect frauds and so on in their lending, their insurance, their trade finance contracts. So bringing transparency for the space and being able to enable a digital back office for this massive market. Because just remember, everybody rely on food. Everybody need to wear a t-shirt which comes from cotton. So agriculture is everywhere on our life, daily life. So, and we're still not doing the proper job to finance this growth of to supply the growth of demand and so on. So that's pretty much our mission in the company. We have been building so far all the capabilities for that. We are in a position now to onboarding clients in the Americas, mostly North America and Brazil and Colombia, Argentina, and US and Canada. Moving to some other markets like in Africa continent, like in Europe, starting to resonate there, and being quite amazing journey for someone who had the opportunity to build infrastructure for our community, let's say this way.
So give me a little bit more background on the company. So name of the company, what year did you actually start the current business and so on?
Yeah, we found the company, incorporated and founded in 2020, but we start to build the infrastructure and the modeling, the first version of the system and so on in 2019. This is part of a more long experience. So I have been working for banks doing kind of this job of designing and developing since 2007. Most of the time in separate pieces of the process. So I have been learning how to help these folks to digitize their process. Despite of many times they don't they build projects and so on, but they don't build this infrastructure itself. So that's another point why we started the company, to help them to build. And in 2020, in this second quarter of 2020, we started in commercial phase, moving up to the products we have today and so on. And on this journey, trying to address the most prescient, the most critical points of this space. So what we need to do to solve most of the gaps. We need to finance, we need to insure, we need to help the commercialization side, and we need to attach all that with the environmental services. So when I say environmental services, most of the time is carbon credits and some other type of markets. But this is kind of like the big segments we need to address to solve the problems in this space, mostly of the problem, not all, of course. And that's why we start, in fact, and we start to build in 2019. So the infrastructure for all of that, how to collect data, how to measure, how to model, how to validate, how to bring transparency and so on.
Right. So from what you just described, there's really, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's four major things I heard. You're talking about how to finance something as an agricultural activity for farmers or producers. You're talking about how to insure it. You're talking about how can you, in a sense, your platform or solution, how can you help me commercialize it? And then finally, you move beyond that into what I call the UN development goals, which talk about things like sustainability, carbon management, climate change, those kinds of impacts. There's a whole slew of development goals over there as well. So that in itself is a whole separate discussion, which we'll probably defer more toward the end. But from a financing perspective, you're right. Everybody to operate, for the most part, has to work with financial services and financial companies to get loans, working capital, in a sense, to support their business. My dad had the same problem. He founded his own business. His thing was he always he always used the analogy. He says bankers are special. He said when it's a sunny day, they're happy to loan you an umbrella, and as soon as it rains, they want the umbrella back. And your personal example, where you brought up about the fact that we were going to loan you money for a tractor, and then wanted about $4 million of collateral for a $15,000 tractor, sounds very, very normal to me. And the whole point of your business is, if it's done right for all parties, then we wind up saying, no, wait a minute, I don't need $4 million of collateral for a $15,000 tractor. I might want $50,000 of collateral for a $15,000 tractor. Why? Because the risk has come down so much through the services that you're providing for everybody, which is, that kind of a thing would be an enormous win. So I'd agree with you.
Yeah, and just remember, you have in the same region, everybody who is listening here has experience in the space, can understand that this example. So you are in the same county or the same state, let's say this way, but you have different farmers in the same county. You have farmers in the same crop, so doing soybeans in the same county, which have different production levels or yields and different losses profiles over time. So if you don't bring that inside of your decision process, you will be always considering the worst case scenario for everybody. And many times, and reality is, most of the farmers are incredible. They do a hell of a job, let's say this way. And they go through all this process with very low losses. So why you penalize the entire group without with no good analysis of the process? Basically, because you don't have the tools to do an individual profile of all the aspects for every single loan or insurance contract you do and so on. So that's our mission. How can we build and deliver the profiles in the hand of the operators, which can really define the risk of every single farmer and every single plot, every single crop field. So a farmer can have 10 or 20 or whatever the number of crop fields. That can change the perspective, because then you can see the real picture, which is, okay, we have 5 crop fields here for some part of the country, which is kind of bad every year. So let that folks, we will manage the risk in a different way, but all the other folks are in the good spot. So why we are penalizing them? Because that 5 ones which are not proper managed or have bad soil or have flood risks and so on. And it's kind of mad, sometimes a madness to think about this is not a daily used tool today. But not everything is solved as we expect. So that's why we are bringing this type of service. So when you can analyze the process and have proofs of everything, then you can start to bring down the costs and the risk, improve the risk profile and understand what's happening. Another point is, how can you do a real-time monitoring of the portfolio? Because that means an institution can say, okay, we did this 1,000 loans, everything is running good, but we have 5 or 10 which are in some kind of beginning of loss. So let's take a look, or let's call the farmers. So you start to use your resources more wisely, which comes down the cost and the risk for the general portfolio. That means the farmers will have less pressure for their loans or better terms and so on.
Yeah, let me ask you a question then. Following up, obviously the whole thing from a lender perspective is trying to manage and mitigate risk. And so you're right that to do it correctly, it's not a group thing. You want to be able to drill down exactly to who you're lending the money to, find out what their issues are, and then build up a custom profile for just that individual or that farm or operator, which all makes sense. The other side of it too, you point out that you're trying to, the whole thing from the lender perspective to be successful and low risk is that they have to have real-time data. So it's not like when I get a college degree, I pass a bunch of exams and people go thumbs up, hey, Jim, you're great. You just got your degree. They're never going to come back a year later or 10 years later and say, hey, did Jim remember any of that? No, that real-time data is not needed there. You get it once, you're good to go. But in this world, you're right. From a risk perspective, if I'm loaning money to farmers, I certainly want to know if there's a change in condition. And so tell me a little bit about how your service, in effect, can provide what I call the real-time updates that are going to make a lender more comfortable.
Yeah, that's a very important point, because just remember, as we said before, you have this struggle to start. So how you define if yes or no for a contract, but then next day, if you decide yes, okay, what's happening with the $500,000 I lend to somebody? So that's one of the things which scare most the financial providers today, because they are used to understand other markets like commercial lending or small business, or which they can see what's happening on their balance sheet, and the farmer balance sheet is the field. And that's something which they need to add to their operation. So our infrastructure today updates the entire stack of data every day. And then the clients, our clients are typically the institution, the lender, or the insurance company, or the enterprise providers. So they can choose, okay, I don't have enough means to do more than every 15 days evaluation during the contract, or I want to do every 7 days, or every 20 days. So they can choose the interval between more than 5 days and 30 days periods. So every time during a typical 6 months to 2 years contract, depending on the type of lending and so on, but they can define the rate of the frequency of their control, their monitoring, their checking, so they can have a concrete picture of everything happening there in a kind of real-time data daily. So they can go and check the data infrastructure. They can define some rules. Let's say we had a catastrophic event, 52 Celsius degree temperature, and should all the crops die with that condition? Let's make a crazy example here. That they can capture in a daily process, or they can decide, okay, we want to do every 15 days monitoring process. So every 15 days, we have a complete report with risk of fraud, with risk of losses, and so on. And I have an automatic process of flags, which can raise the bad situation for any crop field. So that's pretty much what we have today live. So they can match that with their daily operation. So the manager of the portfolio can say, okay, let me check. It's Monday. I received the package from Agryo. Let me see what is inside. So I have 3 fields I need to check. I need to call my personal people in the field and go there, or maybe call directly the farmer, ask for some other information, or look to other condition of the contract. And I have the other 199 farmers inside of my portfolio, which are okay, still on the line for the track for the good season. So that type of capability they don't have today. So the ability to match the farmer balance sheet live, so the field condition, the real world asset, with their lending portfolio. That's a powerful tool. Because basically you can know everything all the time, anywhere. So that's incredible.
What you just told me, though, one of the major things, not only do I have a ton of data points, number one, number two, I can customize, in a sense, what I call the periods I want to define. Number three, if I've got it right, in a sense, if I'm a lender and I'm picking on whatever it is, soybean farmers in Argentina or whatever I'm doing, I can say, hey, for me, my concern is going to be level of significance, I'll call it, in change. So to your point, back to your example about the 52 degrees Celsius kind of a thing, that would be considered a pretty bad moment in time for any farm. So it is 52 degrees Celsius. The biggest point is that probably from this large database you have, if I've got it right, for me, funding soybean farmers can set what I call alerts of certain event types. And I can say, hey, I know soybean farmers, I know Argentina. These are the only things that I really care about. And if these change out of a certain level of, I'll call it, tolerance from a data perspective, I do need to know that. Alert me that I should be taking more active, action on my end, whatever that is. That's right. So it sounds like the platform adds a whole lot of functionality that I would not be able to easily set up as a lender on my end, tailored to, I'll call it, farmers and produce and management and so on.
Yeah, so that's part of the alert system. The alert system is connected to the fraud detection because they run together. Because once we have the monitoring, you can extract behavior of the crop fields or the real world assets, and then start to alert the institution and even the farmer, depending on the type of arrangement the institution has with the farmers. And they can use that type of alert, or they can at the same time, our system do the fraud side of the things. It's not only fraud by per se, it's typical crazy losses or things out of the expected. So that is a kind of alert system, but this is more long-term process, so every 15 or 30 days measures. But the daily process can be set in the business rules of the user for some kind of, like, let's say you have a risk of massive rainfall. So you can alert even the bank or even the farmers itself. So if the farmers are using the mobile app, which by the way, we have the white label infrastructure, so the bank can use our mobile app, or they can have onboarding facilities for their clients. So they can communicate even with the farmers. It's not our majority or primary goal, because the primary goal is to bring the farmers with better services in the finance. But if the bank wants, they have access to the information they can do. That changed a lot of perspective, because imagine you can have like a war room scenario. So it's a kind of type of thing you see in the movies, people looking what's happening in all places and so on. You can do that. And reality is we can do even other things on top of that for the financial providers today. So it's a must do. It's not a we can do. It's
Yeah.
because otherwise you cannot normalize the analysis of everything and padronize the process.
So tell me, so you obviously there's a ton of data the platform in a sense can deliver to financial service providers. On the other side of it, tell me a little bit more about, if I'm a farmer, first of all, give me a little bit of background. I'm a farmer. I do raise soybeans, let's say. Somehow I'm going to find out about this platform and get introduced to it. And then I have to make a decision like, why would I participate in this platform? What's it going to cost me? What data do I have to provide to the platform? Tell me a little bit. Let's look at the farmer side of it and talk to me about how the farmer would see this.
If the farmer, let's take an example of the farmer which is not so much satisfied with their services today in the finance, let's say. So they can go and let's say they are part of a credit union. So they can go and ask for the credit union, folks, we need to improve this process of onboarding and credit scoring and so on. Why do you don't try the Agryo infrastructure? So typically we work with the company, and the company provide the access to the farmer. So the farmer don't pay for the service at the end. The company who, let's say the credit union in this example, will be connected to our APIs, so let's say, or the white label interface, and they will provide the access through their infrastructure or through our white label infrastructure to the farmer, and the farmer will be able to join, prepare and provide their portfolio. So, okay, I have 5 crop fields in these places, 3 with soybean, 1 with corn, and so on. And that will be building the farmer portfolio in general and the individual crop field profile. That's another thing we do in the farmer's perspective. It's very important because every single crop field can have a different profile. That means you can build the credit scoring in a segmented way, so you can value better the parts of their production which are better. So today is not done this way most of the time. And the farmer can have this value of access information. If the credit union in the example want to share more information from what we have inside of the system, they can habilitate in the farmer side things like the daily alerts. We have like real-time weather conditions, yield maps of the live production. So it's like every day updated. Things like how much rain have been happening, not only forecast in the last couple of days, or what's the temperature of the soil, moisture of the soil, and so on. So we have all that type of information we use for modeling. they can enable that for the user, their user, for the farmers. It's at that point is much more a decision on the company side. So what we can bring to, what should bring to the farmers. But there are a ton of potential extra uses for what we have inside of the system. And that's always a great selling point for even for the companies. So how can you help better your farmers to bring more information to their decision process?
Yeah. So if I'm a farmer, and you're right, there's a whole, well, the advantage for me, first of all, number one, I'm not paying for the system. I'm a data provider to the system. Number two, I won't have to call my brother and say that he has to put up his house as collateral the next time I need to buy a tractor. So that's a good news for me. But then the other side is I have responsibilities on this platform based on, as you say, whoever the financial institution is, whatever the data points they want to collect that they can customize, then I have to provide that data. So I don't know exactly what all that data is, you know, as you said, soil moisture and so on. Is the collection of that data automated, or do I have to enter that? How does that work? Tell me a little bit about it.
100% automated. The only points which we need to receive is the location, the geo coordinates, and the type of product will be raised there.
Okay.
So let's say the soybean contract in certain place. In the case of the contract itself for the financial provider, then you have the next extra information, which is the beginning and end of the contract. So when you know where is the place, what's the product, and the start and the end of the contract, you can then profile everything about that place and everything else without any extra information, which, by the way, make much easier for the integration process and the onboarding of the farmers itself. That's one of the things we have been working quite hard to get to the most light touch possible for the farmer side, because then you can facilitate the process. And people have work to do. They cannot be all day in the computer or on the mobile screen.
Well, and the reason I ask that is, since I'm familiar with some other applications, a friend of mine in what I call the field services for the oil industry, what he did was they collect wastewater from, I'll call it fracking process in the oil fields. Mm-hmm. One of the things he did that was kind of cool, he put sonar detectors on the wastewater tanks. And so literally, it sounds crazy, but the people who do the management of the actual oil field no longer have to go check the tanks or anything like that. The tanks check themselves. The tanks actually will call the trucks for service. And when the truck services the tank will actually send out an acknowledgement for the trucker to say that he should be paid. And then the trucker is automatically paid. So the whole thing is automated end to end with no people in the middle at that point, other than the trucker doing the driving back and forth, which is pretty cool. And I think on the farmer end, whatever can be done on your side of the fence that automates that data collection puts them back in charge of their business and less more on the data collection side for sure, which is really good.
Yeah, it's very important, because one of the things we just need to remember, as the personal finance is moving towards the automation process, the agricultural finance will be more sustainable as much more we automatize the process. Basically, because we have then a low cost process and a more transparent one. It's a kind of no-brainer, because you can reduce cost and improve the quality at the same time. It's normally our mind is not quite on that type of thing. Normally we think, okay, we need to improve cost, raise the cost to have better quality. It's not the case. And that makes possible for the institutions to lend more and more efficiently, because it's two very important points.
Well, there's another thing that comes up with this. So whatever the institution is, they've now got a group of farmers they're loaning to. Mm-hmm. But your platform is doing this across many institutions and many farmers, right? So it's not just one institution. So what's happening is you're winding up with a history of performance from all these farms. So there might be two banks or credit unions or whatever loaning to farmers in, say, Argentina doing soybeans. And each one of them has a set of farmers they're working with. But your platform is collecting all of that data. So the question is there, tell me a little bit about given that I have all that data, is there anything that at some point you plan to do with that data beyond just the immediate thing? The immediate purpose of that data is for the lender to have a much better idea of the risk associated with making a loan to that farmer, a crop loan or whatever it's going to be. But you now have this, what I call historical database that has tons and tons of data in there across whatever the institutions are and the farmers. And you can identify, I would assume, pretty interesting trends. You'd say, oh, here's 10 farms in the same area. 5 of these farms are doing great. 5 of these farms are doing lousy. But you've been collecting a lot of detailed data that would help understand how to optimize. Maybe, if Sachin and I are 2 farmers, he's watering his soybeans more than I am. I'm getting low yields. He's getting higher yields. Maybe the difference is water. I don't know. But whatever the factor is, that data sits in your platform now. And so is there a thought on how that can add value back to the farmers in the industry?
Yeah, it's the next stage of the company itself. One of the things is to be able to monetize the data for the farmers.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when you have, like, say, a long-term profile, so just before that, today we evaluate the last 21 years of any place on Earth. So since 2000, we can go further. We have been doing some experiments for land evaluation for people involved in the litigation process. So they want to see how much production they have last 40 years and so on. You can go even up to 2000, up to the 90s, but we stop in the 2000s. So January 2000 up to here. But with that, you can consider a farmer who can stay this year, next year, and the next, let's say, 3 years on the system, working with their client, with their bank, and we have been processing that. So then you have a long-term profile with the pre-existing history and the measured history during the contracts on the banking side. So basically, that data, it's very valuable. So the point is, when at some point we will be able to monetize that data for the farmer itself. So let's say we have another bank trying to work in that region, and they don't have any clue about what's happening there. And we have the farmers with the history there. So the farmer will be able to monetize their process. So, and that's part of our architecture itself. Part of our services is a kind of pseudo-anonymous process. So we don't keep any PI and PCI information. So for the listeners here, and it's not a individual or information. So things like a social security number in US, things like that, they're not in our platform. So that means we can easily bring other users of the information. But nevertheless, we have a way to provide the resources back to the farmer, link it to their location, their coordinates, let's say this way.
Yeah.
So that can enable a lot of other tools. For example, even so, adding on that, one thing which is coming live on our system soon is the supply chain side of the things. So basically, let's say you have the farmer who has a history, has a production, and a buyer of products, or let's say a trading company or a input supplier can go and check, okay, how many farmers I have in Franklin County in Iowa? I have 1,000 farmers. Okay, from these farmers, how many of those have soybean crops? Oh, 800. It's from the 800, how much of those I can receive the products, let's say in end of August or beginning of September, let's say. 300 of the farmers. So the buyer of crops can know where they need to look for and where in the location, what is the location of the crop field in an individual basis. So they can visit the crop fields and then find the farmers. And so this enables lots of other services on top, and which can be monetized for the farmers. Because the whole idea behind our service is the companies pay for this infrastructure, And on top of that, you can enable other revenue sources for the farmer side. And that revenue source will generate more finance, which will be making the financial providers use our platform and pay back. So we don't have any bad day if we enable more farmers to progress. So they will be generating more business on our infrastructure. So that's a win-win situation.
Yeah. So one of the other things you mentioned earlier was about insurance. And so I know in the US, as an example, if I was a wheat farmer in Kansas or whatever, one of the things I might do is because commodity prices vary all over the place for a lot of reasons, right? Many of them not under my control. It's not just the pandemic. It's a lot of reasons that'll influence commodity prices between supply and demand. So one of the things that is not unusual in the US is, in a sense, getting crop insurance, right? So tell me a little bit, you talked about insurance, and how would that play into your platform a little bit as an opportunity?
Yeah, two things very clearly. One is the parametric process of the insurance. So you have parametric insurance by de facto. So because we have the ability to show what's happening on the field, what's happened before and what's happening today. So you can define the rules of the process by individual level and then compose like groups and, insurance. It's very important to have risk spread on space because that balance the potential losses and make the insurance cheaper. And because you have the individual profiles of every single crop field, you can do that. Another point is once you have insurance which is attached to the data of the situation of the place, and you have the layer like we have the smart contracts process, so you can define the rules in the parametric side, so as a parametric insurance, and you can define the unleash of the cover for the farmers. So basically, in this situation would be a farmer in Iowa has insurance for his soybeans, let's say. Something terrible happens, we check and we get the losses. Let's say they lost 50% of their crops. Automatically, the data who drives this measure of the 50% can trigger the contract for the insurance company. The contract can automatically pay the farmer immediately.
Right.
So let's say it's an extreme event like a tornado or something like that, which you can easily and quickly detect the changes, the impact. So you can cover the farmer immediately almost. That changed a lot on this time and the speed and the cost of the process. And by the way, it's the only way you can do insurance for other regions which are not served today. Just remember, US has the best finance system for agriculture. Despite some troubles in the last couple of years, this is the best finance system together with Europe because the common policy there in the European Union. Everything else, it's not so great. So you need to improve insurance usage and access all over the place. Only you can do that in an effective way if you automatize the process and have a transparent process, which you can have, for example, checks on the fraud. So if the farmer asks for the insurance, okay, they have losses or something else is happening here. So you can measure that and show for the reinsurer or for the bank which is financing. That changed a lot of perspectives on the space.
Well, and I assume once I take out crop insurance somewhere, wherever I'm doing that, that has an immediate impact on the lender side to reduce the risk as well. Because all of a sudden
Absolutely.
they go, if there's a tornado and Jim can't produce anything, he's going to get 50 cents a bushel, not $1. So there's a bottom floor that changes that risk profile for the lender quite a bit. So that's a big deal as well.
Yeah, and the ability to use a system like ours and share information between the bank and the insurer. So let's take the same example. Let's say a bank financed that farmer in Iowa, and at the end they have a trouble and they lost. So the bank can go and share their evaluation process using the Agryo infrastructure. So they have the reporting and all the measures and so on. So they share with the insurance company and say, look, we evaluate the place is a real agricultural place, has a good history, but this year was kind of crazy. The farmer lost 50%. Here is the data, verify that, you can track the changes on the status of the field. Unfortunately, the farmer needs the coverage. So that can make less noise in the space between the entities and facilitate the farmer protection, because the problem, sometimes the farmers have quite long journey to receive their money back. So it's not always a short line.
So a question on that, since for the services that you provide, Isaque, is there some sort of certification or some sort of certification that you have to maintain to be able to provide those services to the lenders for most part, right?
Yeah, in multiple aspects, in the software quality aspects, in the security aspects, and in the modeling or the results and measures and so on. So we are even considering we have some partnerships, and we are even considering create like a program for like third-party auditors, like researchers and so on. We just don't have yet enough capability to bring that live, but that would be another extra layer of a fourth layer on quality side, because then you can have not only our process of tracking as a modeling side, but have other people doing that. Unbelievably, today you don't have easily ways to do audits in modeling ways, or modeling process. So we are considering to build an infrastructure for that ourselves, and maybe sell that service from outside, because we're still missing in the market that type of extra layer of measure. But the other ones are kind of critical. So software quality for enterprise level systems, security quality, and data and modeling from ourselves, it's very important too. And by the way, one of the things which help us to assure the clients what's happening is every single thing we do inside of our system has approved in a blockchain, let's say this way, infrastructure, public network. That means everybody involved, let's say an insurance company, can go receive a report from the bank. So the bank has the same example. So the bank said, okay, this farmer lost their crops, you need to help them to cover. So the insurance company received the report from the bank, the report from the underwriting phase. So they look and they decide that it's a good place. The monitoring phase, which we keep tracking everything for the bank, and they receive a report every 15 days, let's say. And the insurance company look to the information and say, it's 100% true. So let me verify that. So the insurance company can take the results or the documents, submit through our APIs, and our APIs will get back the proofs on the public network on the blockchain one, which we don't have control at any point. So it's once it's submitted there, we cannot change that.
Right.
And then the insurance company can get back the proofs that PDF they receive is true, that results are true, the scoring and so on. So then they can say, okay, I don't trust Agryo, I don't trust the bank, but I trust this infrastructure, which is out of the control of both companies, and the farmer lost, let's pay the coverage. That can change everything. And that's another layer of trust on the system itself. Yeah,
it's a pretty big deal. Sachin, anything else on your end?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah, so also Isaque, I'm sorry. In terms of the scoring and the point-based thing that you pointed out was really of interest. And I'm sure you might be kind of measuring different, aspects, different variables to kind of give that scoring system to the lenders. I just want to understand what sort of technology do we use? You're talking about APIs and AI. So are there some sort of like enterprise technologies, and how does that work?
Yeah, so I will not disclose too much because it's our proprietary tech here, but I can explain what's how this works. So basically, we profile time and space, and the behavior of the products on the place, on time and space. What that means? What that means is you can have things which move over time. So the growth of the products, for example, the yield of the product on the field. So that's changing on the time. So every day improving or going down, depending on the situation. So that's one perspective we took. We always look to the information to profile and do the scoring. Today we have 72 different indexes we generate, which in the middle is credit scoring, risk assessment, and weather scoring, and so on. But then you have things on the space. So what I mean on the space, in the space I can say spatially distributed measures. Very simple one, you can say, okay, how stable or uniform is the production of the farmer? So you are not seeing now the changes over time, but you are seeing the things on the space. So that means you can say, okay, this farmer is much better, manage much better the things than the other farmer or the same farmer in different fields, let's say this way. So that you can start to have individual level measures. So basically everything we model and we do, it's done in these two big dimensions. That drives the measures we extract and how we show the things for them. Because at the end, financial providers don't want to look at the 159 pages of the report plus 72 scores plus 5 gigabytes of data for every single contract. So they don't have time for that. What they want to have is access to a summary of everything, which has the critical decision points with the critical scoring. And then if they have any doubts or if it's out of their scoring range, they can go and check the other information. So then you can work as a funnel process. So most of the contracts go through a very light touch. Some go to a mid-size effort, let's say, and some which are kind of not clear what's happening, they can go into a deep dive. So our modeling is structured in that way. It's 100% enterprise build from our side. We combine all of that in a cloud infrastructure, and we mix with some other technologies like I mentioned before, the blockchain layer and so on, to provide this type of kind of novel service for the space.
Interesting. And I guess you have a lot of your team kind of on the field for that initial data collections as well, right?
Yeah, the training samples, it's part of our, so you have different process. So when we are building stuff, so you need to collect information and have the ground truth, let's say, right? To then start to train the process and validate and then model forward. So we have been collecting information from partners, from ourselves. And I have been doing this work a lot in the past on the field, riding a car and checking field by field and doing some measures. And we have been building this type of architecture for validation and so on, which, by the way, is always in the building process. So it's every time you go for a new crop or a new region, you need to do some improvements and part of the process, which by itself is another product. Over time will be a kind of ground through accessing infrastructure.
So it does sound like from again, the value of the data you're collecting is huge. And again, going back to the farmer's view, it's certainly a benefit to me to know that Sachin, I'll call it down the road for me, doing soybeans is getting double the yield I am. That's a value to me to understand and learn from that for sure.
And things like, for example, very simple things. Okay, I finance a same level for my 5 crop fields, but I have my convoy data, which is saying, one of the fields was not so good. and let's say you want to improve next year. So you have two options. You can ask for a better finance, or you can ask for a credit for long term, so for soil improvements. And so you start to match that with the financial side of the things, which empowers the decision process on the farmer side. And that's pretty important, because just remember, we have everyday losses in soil, which are astronomical. So we are, my last time I checked was 30 basis points every year. That means in 100 years, we lost 30% of our soil. In the next 100 years, we will lose 30% of our agricultural soils. It's a massive number. So if we don't have measures to help the improvements of the management and the resource protection, doesn't matter anything we finance, just the end point of the things. We need to support the production in all levels, and that's a critical task and job for our society.
Yeah, excellent. So Sachin, anything else on your end, or?
No, I think we are on the top of the hours. I mean, I guess.
Okay, so Isaque, I will summarize and just say it's phenomenal in a sense. A little bit I understand, I'll say, from our discussion today. What's amazing to me is all of the stakeholders that can benefit from your platform and that shared data model. Obviously, blockchain has a lot to do with establishing the credibility of the data that's on there, for sure. But it's the fact that you're collecting all this data at a level and able to analyze it in a way that, in a sense, none of the stakeholders can do without you easily on their own. It's really not going to happen. And the fact that it's pooled is even a bigger value, I think. And back to your point about, soil loss and loss of farmland and all that stuff. It's funny, the kind of service you're providing, I don't know who else is looking to do this kind of thing, but I'll say it, if you go back to those UN Sustainability Development Goals and you look at them and ask yourself, okay, these are issues. And obviously we know that the food chain is a critical part of sustainability, for sure, one of the most critical parts. And you go back to your point about loss of farmland, loss of soil quality problems and all that. In a sense, learning from the data you've got is one of the most beneficial things I could think, not just to the immediate stakeholders, but to all of us, is to figure out what can we learn from that, for sure. So certainly I want to thank you for the time you gave us today to understand about your platform and everything else you can do. It's really, I'll call it very exciting, honestly, for what you're pulling together as data. And the benefits that can come from that are really, really big. So I won't keep you any longer, but thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's been a great discussion.
Thanks so much, Gene. Thanks so much, Saki. And I just would like to point another thing. Imagine over time when every single farmer has their self-sovereign identity profile, which matches with their property, so they can prove they have property. Many places on earth, there are this gap of documentation and so on. And not only that, you can prove you have income, you have production, you have services for the society, you have protected forests. We didn't even talk here about environmental services, but you cannot finance anything without protection assets like forests and so on. So that means we can really go for sustainable development goals. Otherwise, we are just scratching the surface of the development process. And once you have like a self-sovereign profiling process for everyone in the space, you can start to, for example, help these farmers to get their improvements in education, because you can prove these guys are really producing something which has impacts on the society. So there are many repercussions. It's a big task for us to solve, to help to solve. And as always, happy to talk and try to bring this notice outside, because sometimes everything seems good, nobody's complaining, but reality is we have lots of challenges in how to support the farming space. And remember, the farming space is getting old. Yes. Without good technology, good finance, and good improvements on the production, we are in a serious condition, and we should be always looking for the people who bring the food in our table and improve our lives. Thanks so much for the opportunity, and congrats on your work. And the mission it's big and noble. Keep doing the work.
Great. Thank you very much, Isaque. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.